Welcome back. The next session will be on Accelerate Responsible AI in Austria. The concept behind this session is that responsible AI will only happen if we build the systems. We create responsible AI that's actually useful and usable and comes in time such as it is relevant. So the elements here are responsibility and acceleration. Acceleration being the ability to deliver tools while they still matter. It will be a short session, a fast-paced session. We have 45 minutes now. I brought my magic device along, which is not primarily to keep you awake, but it's to keep everyone on time. And without further ado, we will kick off with the brief introduction of our panelists. Please, let's go left to right. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm Agata Ciabattoni, and I'm a professor at the Vienna University of Technology. In my research, I investigate mathematical logic, which offers precision and trust, and is at the base of very many applications in different fields. Among other things, with my group, we are working on making autonomous agents compliant with norms, social, ethical, and legal norms of our society.
I'm Georg Niklfeld from the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, and we are one of two major agencies in Austria that fund research. So there is one that funds basic research in all fields like humanities, but also including AI, for example. And then we, the Austrian Research Promotion Agency, we fund application-oriented research that always involves at least one company and possibly other organizations like research organizations in many fields. My personal role is in coordinating our funding schemes for digital technologies.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Brigitte Krenn. I'm the Deputy Director of the Austrian Research Institute for Artificial Intelligence. We are quite an old institute, and I have been working in natural language processing since the end of 1980s. And so one of our and my work is really in natural language interaction. So natural language is very key to our social interaction, to us being humans, and that's I think a very important aspect to look into this, what it does to us, to have autonomous systems that interact with us in natural language processing or in natural language and do as humans do, sort of. And this is a main topic I believe we have to look into when we want to do responsible AI.
So good afternoon, my name is Karl Kugler. I'm head of the AI Factory Austria. We provide services around AI, orientation, hands-on services and expertise, but also infrastructure services to SMEs, startups, the public administration and applied research, with the goal to accelerate the usage of AI in a responsible and trustworthy way.
Thank you. And my name is Christoph Bock. I'm a group leader at the Center for Molecular Medicine of the Austrian Academy of Sciences and professor of medical informatics and head of the AI Institute at the Medical University of Vienna. And I will guide you through this panel discussion today. To kick off, we formulated a few questions, and I would briefly ask all the panelists to give me their assessment of these three questions. How does your work or that of your institution accelerate responsible AI in Austria? What would you do differently if you had 10 times the resources? And beyond your institution, what are non-obvious ways to accelerate responsible research in Austria? Please.
I would be very happy to answer question 2, which is the dream of every scientist. So what I would do differently, of course, I would invest in an interdisciplinary group and mainly on world test beds, which are real world test beds. So we have very good theoretical results concerning how to design autonomous agents that are compliant with norms, but we are still working on a very small environment, and the challenge would be actually to go to real world environments. And so we really want to have not only smarter AI, but responsible AI. So that would be our dream.
Can you give an example what that would be? What would be the test case you're dreaming of to do in the real world?
I mean, of course, biggest dream would be autonomous cars. So, autonomous cars, they should kind of understand and reason and being compliant with the street codes. But of course, it's currently out of our reach. So, but maybe say rescue robot might be already something slightly more achievable, but again, with more resources. What we are now doing, we are working on Atari games where we insert some norms, and actually our games, they behave as they should do, but we don't know if this is the same also in a bigger environment.
Exciting. Georg, please.
Okay, so on the first question, maybe for the non-Austrian participants, I should explain the institutional setup very briefly. So there are several ministries in Austria that define digital policies. So that's actually not us. Our task is to implement the digital policies. However, I think for today, it makes for a more interesting discussion if I don't just regurgitate what other people have decided, but I give you my personal thoughts on what can be done. I think what is quite good in Austria is that in our funding for AI, for the last few years, we have had a strong focus on trustworthy and responsible and ethical AI. Most of our calls have this very high up in their topic definitions, and we have also some quite successful large projects in this area, which maybe I'll refer to later. My basic thought is that if we want to accelerate responsible AI in Austria, we should really focus a lot on this accelerating part. I think when AI gets developed in Europe, it tends to follow European values that we all want to see more prominently represented in AI technologies, like the rights of persons and individuals. To do that is to get more AI done in Europe. So do that, and always keep in mind that whatever you fund and whatever you do, it goes in that direction. On the second point, well, 10 times more money for us would still not really be satisfactory, because in everything related to AI that we do at the moment, we get crazy oversubscriptions, as you can imagine. So let's assume 100 times more. If it's 100 times more money, then I would ask first, so where does this money come from? Is it taxpayer money or is it private money? Because what I think happens in Europe a lot is that there are attempts to replace the private financing that happens in other continents with public money in Europe. And that's sometimes quite problematic. For example, when we talk about huge data center build out, should this really be funded by the taxpayer? I doubt it. So if it's public money, then I think we could continue doing what we do, but just have more impact on the technological trajectories in Austria. Third point, something beyond my institution. What I would really like to see as an Austrian citizen is for the representatives of the Austrian coalition government to make a press conference and explain to the people on the street what their view is where Austria should be in the usage of digital and AI technologies in, let's say, 2040, 2050. What we see happening is, for example, also in the US, this wild swings of under-regulation and then crazy bursts of over-regulation when something seems to happen, and the public is left confused and without orientation. So I would like Austrian politician to get some good advice and then make these statements, which can be revised later, but there should be an overarching narrative.
Thank you.
So coming from a research institution, of course, I'm thinking of kind of a research group comparable to what you have been saying, but really focusing on what does agents, these systems which interact with us in a kind of seemingly autonomous way, or even truly autonomous way. What does this do to small children, like toddlers, to small kind of early school children, to adults, and long-term studies to see what's happening and what's also happening in the brain and through these interactions. So this is one thing. And the other thing which is related to that is how do we need to learn and understand how can we do LLMs in a way that they are tools for humans and that when humans use LLMs to solve problems, what happens after this phase of using the LLMs? What's staying in the mind? What's staying in the cognition? And does this enable humans to do things better without the LLMs then or not? And what does it need to enable people to do things with LLMs and then without them doing things better? So that's this learning aspect. And that would be really something I'd like to see to come up. And really, we have been working on that, on that topic, and to convince reviewers on that topic for quite some time. But reviewers were not convinced about nitty-gritty tiny details, saying, yeah, these are all good ideas, but reviewers being not convinced, making funding bodies not being convinced. So that's a bit a sad situation.
So intelligent people have said that evolution has started kind of millions of years ago, acting on human and its tools as a joint kind of package, basically. Would you argue that kind of nowadays, not so much evolution, but really competition that our children and our students are exposed to is really kind of the full package of the person and its AI use, and everyone leaves an imprint on the other? Or how will this work in the future when everyone is kind of so much empowered? Like everyone is basically a cyborg already today. Kind of navigation systems that we have in our brain is outsourced to the phone, and language skills will soon be also with the phone, and now AI. Will we become kind of machines of sorts, cyborgs, where a lot of the intelligent processes are in the machine?
I don't know. But if the intelligent processes are in the machine and we need to be able to use them properly, so we need to see how, if the intelligent processes are in the machine, how do we need to interact with these machines? How do the machines need to work? So that we don't just say, okay, that's the machine did it, the machine is much better than I am, that's it. So we see that since decades where researchers, even when we did data sets for natural language processing, where our experts relied on what the machine said, yeah? And then how do you get people out of that thinking, and what does the systems need to kind of have inbuilt to drag people again out of it and support people in using tools and not in just replacing a lot of their kind of brain capacity by systems. So that's what I'd like to see and to research.
All right, so Christoph asked in the beginning to give interesting out-of-the-box answers that you were not expecting, so let me answer twofold. First of all, I would not tell anybody if we get tenfold the resources in my team, because we want to embrace an AI-first and agent-first mindset, that really people think about how can we automate certain processes, how can we automate certain everyday tasks that are not really interesting, that are kind of boring. And if we just throw more money at it, we just get a higher headcount and everybody forgets this thing about automating boring, useless stuff. So that's the first thing, really not tell anybody and keep up the spirit of doing what we have with our resources. And the second part of the answer would be to invest in two things. In the ecosystem, because a lot of work that we do is based on connecting dots in the ecosystem. So you have the universities, the research institutions that have excellent people working on AI, and you have the industry, the startups, the public administration that has an immense need for AI. And a lot of the work that we do is actually connecting these dots. People that have a demand for AI with people that can address this demand, bring these people together, let them talk, make a translation between what they need and what they can, and enable this. And the second part of what we would invest into would be our supercomputer that we're currently building, because as you know, this is really something where we need resources, where we need a lot of investment, and this would be the second part of where we would put this money into.
Exciting. I don't know if you realize the panel has from kind of university to research institutes to more applied kind of research funding to kind of connecting all the partners, the full value chain here on the panel, which is very exciting. So let's be concrete. Like in the universities, they are producing really, really good research. And more often than not, there is an excited postdoc or PhD student who at least nowadays has it on their agenda there or in their head that maybe they could think of a spin-off company if conditions were right. And that would be this kind of homegrown Austrian AI that could emerge from it. Probably not in direct competition with Google, but as specialized tools for specialized purposes. Who wants to give advice to kind of a young university graduate, PhD student, postdoc, who wants to start an AI spin-off company and take it from there and build a responsible AI in Austria? What would you recommend to that person?
It should be.
So what I would recommend is to be brave. I think that's the most important thing that you have to be. You have to dare to do it. You have to embrace this, because actually it takes a lot of attitude and a lot of willingness to do that. And I think that's where we culturally are lagging behind as compared to the US, because in the US you dare to fail. In Austria, if you're not 100% sure that this thing will work and if it works out on the long term, people will never do it. So I think the most important thing is to really help these people follow their vision and also allow them to fail with their vision, because this is something that we are not very good at, to allow this culture of failing and trying again and again and again. And I think that's the first step that needs to be done. And then the second step is also to ask, is there a market out there? Because what we often see is that there are great ideas and great solutions, but there's no problem that has to be solved with that. And we always call it very lovingly, it's the problem in search of the solution in search of a problem. And to really help people understand that they first have to understand what's the problem they want to solve, and maybe they can adjust their solution, their mindset, their talent, in order to really solve something that brings value to society, to the people that need it actually. And then we can connect these people that have this demand with a person that can fulfill it. But I think the most important thing is really become brave and try things out.
And I think maybe from our side, there are offers for such people. So we have spin-off fellowships that help you on the first steps. So you get funding for your initial steps towards a company. But I think what's interesting and where we can all get better as a system is what happens next, because there may be changes of direction and there may be additional projects necessary. And then sometimes it becomes quite burdensome to ask for more money, to get into a very competitive call and then maybe be rejected the first time. So that's something that we're actively thinking about for such people that clear the first threshold, so they get accepted for initial funding, to then give them more clear perspectives that if they are progressing nicely, if they make changes but not huge changes, then based on this initial decision, they can be sure that they will get continued support from us until market readiness.
So in an academic lab, I'm used to submitting an application to the EU last summer, and now a couple of weeks ago, I hear that my grant was funded. That's great, and I have found a way to essentially decouple the doing of science from the funding of science. So whatever we are doing is already the next level, while the funding still funds what was exciting last year. And that also works reasonably well if you're running a big company. But how is that going to work for a kind of a small startup where kind of everything dramatically changes in weeks and months? So where's this kind of, how can I get funding from FFG in weeks rather than in 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, that's a challenge. So we have some formats that are quite fast. So it will take 2 or 3 months, let's say, for your contract to arrive. But still, processes in software innovation are crazy fast now, especially due to the usage of AI as well. So we just had a case in Austria where a company that was spun out of another company 18 months ago had their successful exit. And within 18 months, the public funding system can play only a small catalytic role, so it cannot be a main driver. So I think that's something that we haven't quite solved yet. We're working.
Because you rely on external peer review and these are just slow, or because your internal processes are just too slow?
It depends. These very fast formats that I mentioned, they do not use external peer review because that's a factor that slows things down. But where we look for excellence in research with very high oversubscriptions, then we need to invest also in a qualitative process, which again becomes more challenging now with the arrival of the AI written proposals. The volume of proposals that we process keeps increasing. There have been some calls to the European Commission that have been more than 100 times oversubscribed. So there are certain strains on this whole funding system that are not fully solved right now.
Is any one of you experimenting with AI in the evaluation of funding proposals?
Yes, but in a formalistic way. So we will not let AI systems as they are now get close to judging the quality of a proposal, but they can help us judge whether all the appendices that are required, all the types of information that we need are there, and help us get faster in that way.
Staying a little bit with this AI startup, imagine those guys there, or girls or people, found a couple of million kind of seed invest, and they have a team of 8 people now doing cool stuff, and they want to train some big models. Where in Austria and for what cost can you get like a couple of 10,000 hours on latest NVIDIA GPUs?
Everybody's looking at me. That's part of our job. So I don't know if you are aware of that, but everybody of us in here pays taxpayer money for European supercomputers for the last couple of years already. And all of you can use them for free. So that's basically an answer that's already given. The problem is the marketing is not very good. And usually these systems tend to be very bureaucratic and slow. But over the last couple of years, last couple of months, actually, Europe has woken up. Thanks to the president of the US, we learned, okay, we have to speed up our development, become less bureaucratic, more pragmatic in some ways. And these systems are available exactly for these type of people that really need GPUs rather quickly. They want to try something out. They want to fail maybe with model training, but they want to have it for free. It's paid by taxpayer money for the value of the society. So the best way for these people would be to just reach out to us. We help them find the right systems, write the application for that, get it through in 3 to 5 days, help them start calculating on the systems, and hopefully start making money quite soon.
Exciting. Speaking of taxpayers' money, Brigitte, I read that you worked on a feasibility study for a Bundes-LLM, a federal Austrian language model. Now that sounds like a great opportunity to fail miserably. Can you explain a little bit more? Is that going to happen, and how can we make that a success, or probably we shouldn't do it?
You shouldn't be kind of drawn away by the title, because this Bundes LLM, this is just a label. So the content and the goal of this study was really to look into AI-based technology and look into governmental processes and where in governmental processes AI could be useful. And one aspect is thinking of creating an Austrian Bundes LLM like the Swiss Abertus or the GPTNL in the Netherlands. So this is kind of the third option, which is far, far away. Yeah. So it was really looking at this broad ecosystem. What do you need if you bring AI into the public services, yeah, and how diverse is it, how diverse are the needs? And we were looking into systems where LLMs are just part of the system of bigger applications. We were looking into fine-tuning of existing LLMs, so making smaller, very, very specific models, model distillation, and we were looking into what does it mean to train an LLM from scratch. Yeah. So this is just the label. I think nobody knows. Or I would never say nobody. So, but I think the majority is really clear about not having an Austrian LLM, because there are LLMs we can use, we can build upon, we can fine-tune, we can distill. There are these small models which have been built in other countries like Switzerland and Netherlands we can build upon. So if a country doesn't have this long-term vision saying, okay, we want to have the whole pipeline on capabilities, on software hardware capabilities, on human resources capabilities in the country because we just want it, then it doesn't make sense to say, okay, we do another tiny model which costs minimum 20, 25, 26 million euros, and this is very small and you don't do any application with it. So the whole study was really looking at this broad portfolio and assessing pros and cons of the different technological pathways to go, and also looking into the ecological costs of the different approaches, and looking into ethical aspects and legal aspects. So it's much bigger, and this study, or the summary of the study, which is more than 100 pages long, will kind of be published soonish. So in the next, I don't know, let's talk about weeks or months.
So you basically wrote a 100-page report, and now you send that by email to the government, and then the government says, oh, thank you, and probably that's it, or?
It's much more positive, really, because there is a lot of people in the ministries and in the Bundeskanzleramt really working on AI applications already. So there is, I always call it the grassroots movement, and there are these flowers kind of blooming, and there is already work done, and there is people having really been sitting together for several years already by now, as far as I understood, and discussing things and looking at from different perspectives. And for me, coming from research, for us, everything is so easy. We just say, okay, we try it out, we take that, we take this, and then do our prototypes and try it out, and then try to kind of make them operational. So, and deploy it. But if you are in an governmental context, there are so many restrictions you have to look into and adhere to, that you just can't say, okay, we just play around. Yeah, okay, at some stage you play around, but then you have this 24 hours, 7 days, very, very secure, etc. And all these different requirements, and it makes a difference. And this was for me really, I learned a lot, and there are so many people in the ministries who are really creating things, and they are talking to them, to each other, which is also great. And they are talking to researchers and to developers.
Sounds great. Before we open to questions, you can already think about questions. I would have one more question for you. The responsibility component, how much can you do on the technological level? Like if you were in charge at OpenAI to kind of create more responsible AI into these systems, how would you approach that? Because the large language models, they are trained on something and then they're fine-tuned on something else. And try to tweak the fine-tuning process or the training process, or embed the whole thing into kind of a safety net environment, or you would just throw out the LLMs and replace them with something new?
No, first of all, it would be a great responsibility. But responsible AI is both about technology and science. So about technology, so there should be stronger guardrails, in particular in some critical context. But there should be also some kinds of basic science. So we should understand how to align them to human value, how to make them respecting norm, how to make them reasoning. And in this respect, maybe I'm biased, but I would add more reasoning and more formal methods to kind of make the answer more reliable and safer. So
now the saying goes,
and also, but this is maybe idealistic, I would make the frontier model available to external scientists so that they can really scrutinize if there is a problem and find the weaknesses, because sometimes if they are evaluated within the company, maybe something can be not seen.
So you said adding more formal methods. Yeah, the saying goes that machine translation became good in the early 2000s when the companies working on that started firing their linguists and hiring computer scientists and just see it as a massive data problem. And that's been pretty much driving the progress of AI ever since. And yes, every once in a while, there is the idea that perhaps adding a little bit more symbolic AI could bring things back, but we haven't really seen a lot of success cases.
Actually,
where are these success cases? Are they coming, and in which areas?
There are already some great success cases, maybe not yet in large language models, but in our other area of AI. And actually, I belong to a cluster of excellence, bilateral AI, and we are really aiming to do that. But we have
Can you
just
give
started.
us an example where, not necessarily from your own work, but from the world at large, where kind of neurosymbolic approaches have outcompeted a classical brute force?
Yes, like there are some games like Go that now they can really beat the champion, and this is a combination of symbolic and sub-symbolic AI. So I believe that this is actually the way to go, because there are no more data. I mean, large language model have already everything like from internet, but there are no more data, which they should kind of reason. That's now the time.
That's a really interesting concept. As long as you have more data to feed your models, just feed more data to your models. But when you're out of data, you need to start thinking.
Yes.
Maybe that's why Greek philosophy worked so well, because there was so little data, so you had to,
they had to think.
Sit down and think.
And think, yes, yes.
Cool. With that, I would like to open for questions. So if you have any questions or comments, I will make a rigorous use of my bell. So keep your answers or questions to 45 seconds, please.
Hello. 45-second comment. I believe that philosophy with data is called natural philosophy, also known as science.
Sounds great.
Entrepreneurs in Houston come to me to talk about responsible AI and ethics, and then they later tell me they had grand ambitions. Then they had to talk to the VCs, and the VCs care about the business, about the money, and they don't care about responsible AI. So many of their dreams, people who are really sincere about wanting to do it, and then the pressure of having to raise money makes it very, very difficult. We don't have the ecosystem in which this is a value that's being appreciated, just about the money.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
I think we have to look at this for bottom up, because businesses alone hardly will drive responsible AI forward. The whole must go on from the public itself, otherwise it won't have much success. So we must focus on the question, how do we make the question of responsible AI more prominent in the public? I mean, yes, we are in a...
I was looking forward to this moment, and finally I could use my bell. I think a very valid point. Next point.
My question is in a similar direction, because from all the talks we had in this context, there was always the problem of corporate interests. And that's the key issue. Ownership is the main problem with AI, because whose interests does AI serve? And it should be, in my opinion, a collective project and a collective ownership. And so it's just the logical step that the whole infrastructure belongs to the people.
Can I summarize the last few things and bring it back to the panel? So I think the question really is, how do we do this in a kind of a morning talk, in a capitalistic world where profits are quite relevant and companies have a quite narrow focus on earning money? How will you implement, what are your suggestions into implementing responsible AI in this context?
Can I first start by saying making money is not a bad thing? I think that we have to keep in mind, because the money has to come somewhere. If you want to build infrastructure, if you want to have fun, if you want to pay for social services, if you want to pay for certain public services, we have to have money for that. So earning money with AI per se is not something that has to be said it's a bad thing. The question is always what does happen and what's the boundaries, the societal boundaries, the boundaries in economic terms, and what's the area that we are moving in. And I think with the EU AI Act, we have a very good beginning where we can start to say, okay, if something is high risk, if something is going to be rolled out to a public use and there's a risk associated with it, it's not only in the interest of the public to look at this risk, but also in the interest of the company actually developing the AI solution to have a look at this risk. So I think we have a good starting point. To say we have to make AI collective, I think it's rather hard to put this into practice, because what does it mean? So do we start at the infrastructure or at the model training? What does it mean to collectivize AI? And I think that has to be discussed maybe in a different round.
Other comments?
Well, there are several policy tools available. One is regulation, and sometimes some areas of this discussion can be quite forwardly regulated, like, for example, resource usage of AI systems. So to introduce rules that limit systems to certain energy profiles and so on. That's quite straightforward. Other things are much more involved when you talk about guaranteed compliance by basically non-deterministic systems, then we soon enter the domains of philosophy. That, of course, is big discussions, and that's why we have conferences like today.
Sounds great. Next question.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the types of organizations that we never seem to consider in Austria when it comes to digital infrastructure are private nonprofits. And I think a lot of us are now looking towards, for example, Wikimedia as a model of how actually digital infrastructure should be, right? But it's 1,000 times harder to establish such a nonprofit, especially in Austria. So do you have any thoughts on how we could actually improve that to make responsible digital infrastructure?
Anyone wants to comment on that question? I share your impression that is very difficult. I wouldn't know a solution.
Not me.
I think it's a different question, because a couple of weeks ago I heard about a platform that should be the European YouTube that's being collectivized, basically. But the question is, what would be the incentive for someone to put content in there if you don't have advertisers? Because if you don't make money out of it, why would people spend time making videos? So I think it's always a question, what's the reason behind it? What's the plan behind it? How to finance it? And maybe there might be a public funding in some parts. But I'm with Georg, not everything can be funded publicly. So we have to find different ways and different models for funding, different ways of how we can share AI, how we can share digital infrastructure.
There was a question.
Just a quick question. How do you imagine an interdisciplinary research group?
Oh, I would love to have philosophers, ethicists, people doing legal reasoning, because what we do now is just we kind of implement some norms, but it would be really interesting to kind of develop them together with, like, of course, people from the humanities. We are computer scientists. We should not do that alone.
Thanks for the panel, and I will do it in 10 seconds. You want to accelerate, but where want you be in 5 years? What is your vision, 5 years AI in Austria?
I think that's a great final question. We have to wrap up soon anyway, so I would ask all 4 panelists to give their 5-year AI, responsible AI in Austria vision.
Okay, so actually AI is developing so quickly that it's already hard to imagine how it will be in 5 years, but I believe that Austria can be a good player, but not alone. I mean, we cannot be technologically self-sufficient, but we should team up with other European countries and develop responsible, trustable, and high quality AI. So that's, I believe it can be done, but not alone.
I completely agree with everything you have said. I think this forum is wonderful. I mean, very informed people talking about ethical issues around digital technologies and AI, but it needs to grow out from here. So we have to reach larger audiences, as I mentioned in the beginning. The public has to be informed well, and not just with negative incentives. So these are all things that we need to work on together to have an intensive debate in Austria, because that was a question about how AI should be used. And I'm quite optimistic from what we've seen over the last years that Austria is a place that will be quite forward in this area.
Well, I think we should go small. So small is powerful, because we can't just kind of try to copy the big things. We won't succeed anyway. So I think we should much more concentrate on smaller models, on bringing things on small hardware, on looking at a small ecological footprint. What does it mean from various aspects to do the smallest possible, not the biggest, the most complicated possible, but the smallest possible in a very multidisciplinary approach. So that's my vision, and that's what I would like to see approaching from this second on, really, or already from the past on, so that we are there even before 5 years' time.
So at our lunch table in work, one of our favorite discussions is whether AGI or superintelligence is going to be there in 3 years from now. But let's assume it's not there, and don't take this bad for now. I would hope for a future where Austria and Europe really embraces AI and technology and not be skeptical for everything that's coming new, but really in a very responsible way embrace it. So that in the kindergarten, in the Volksschule, children really learn to embrace AI in a meaningful and responsible way, in a trustworthy way. And this really then translates into the higher education, into universities, into this culture of daring things, of failing, of trying things out, of competing with others, but also of being brave and self-confident. And if we have that, then all the society, people in academia, people in the economy, people in public administration can benefit from that. And I would like to be very optimistic about that, because if I wasn't optimistic, I would not be doing my job. So I hope in 5 years we all love AI, we all embrace it in a meaningful and responsible way, and really benefit as a society.
Sounds exciting. That brings our 45 minutes to a close, but it continues straight away here in the room with AI in schools, another panel discussion, and then in the Johannes on the right, on personal power, and on the left in the Sitzungssaal, empowering public institutions. And then after that, another 45 or quite a while, there will be the coffee break. And I hope some of these discussions will stay with you in the coffee breaks. Thank you.
Thank you.